Okay, we're going to call the school committee meeting of November 2nd to order. There were 3 of us here. There were 2 on Zoom, so we're doing a virtual meeting today as people are juggling various different challenges. So it is what it is. But we're all here, or most of us are here to work through it. We got a pretty, exciting agenda, I think. So we're going to start with our focus on excellence, and we're going to hear from Danya Mahoney and Mr. Ryan about the biliteracy achievement and the MA Seal of Biliteracy qualifications processes. We then have our consent agenda, and we'll move to reports at that point. We have a new representative of our student advisory committee here, representing in person, and Emily Goodhue, who's the chair of that committee, is on the Zoom as well. So Sachi Selva Kumar, right, is joining us in person. So we're welcome, and we're thankful that you're here.
Thank you.
At that point, we will move to a new business. Talking with Dr. Milczewski, we're going to take things a little out of order, so we're going to move E2 before E1, which is our school improvement plans, since we have so many members of the community here for that, and we're very thankful both for the principals and for the parents/other helpers that are here to talk through those conversations with us. And then we'll have our youth risk behavior survey presentation, and Erica will be here to help us with that. At that point, we will adjourn, not to return to executive session. So, with that said, we will turn. Dr. Milczewski, do you want to introduce the biliteracy
Sure.
stuff?
I know Danya and Derek are probably, I can see the small squares online, so I think they're there. Just like to share quickly as a little bit of frame before they introduce these. Tonight, Derek and Danya are going to speak a little bit about a couple of new awards that we've been recognizing and celebrating in our community. And I think the intent is we believe that biliteracy is a skill that is something that is a tremendous asset to our community and also a tremendous asset for students as they move on to the college and career and out into the world. And it's something that we really want to make sure that we recognize and celebrate with all the other academic awards that we celebrate. So I really appreciate both of their leadership in bringing these awards front and center. We've been thrilled to watch and see all the different students who have received recognitions and awards the past couple of years, and excited to hear from them to share a little bit about both of these awards, what they mean, and also sort of, I think, kind of also why we believe it's really important to celebrate and recognize these awards in biliteracy. So Mr. Ryan and Dr. Mahoney, feel free to take it away.
Great. Is there a slideshow I can see? Or?
There will be. I'm working on it right now.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Can you see that, Dr. Ryan?
We sure can. Thank you so much. So my name is Derek Ryan. I'm the Massachusetts Seal of Biliteracy Coordinator for Reading Public Schools. I'm here with Dr. Danya Mahoney, our wonderful department chair at the high school. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We're really excited to talk about this endeavor. So last year, we joined over 200 other public schools and launched the State Seal of Biliteracy program here in RPS. And it was a great success. We had over 25 students earning the Seal of Biliteracy in Spanish, French, Mandarin, Chinese, Portuguese, and even Hungarian, which is pretty cool. The Massachusetts Seal, like the Language Opportunity Coalition Pathway Awards, not only recognizes students in our world languages program, but also our heritage speakers, right? Those students who speak a language other than English at home. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so the Language Opportunity Biliteracy Pathway Awards are important because they promote long-term language study. They can be awarded along with the Seal of Biliteracy as well, so you can get 2 types of awards. These awards, which are certificates that students will receive at an award ceremony next semester, help students prove beyond doubt that their language proficiency skills are very valid to potential employers in the future, as well as to post-secondary education institutions. So these awards that highlight the importance of learning a language also have obvious educational benefits, right? Like improved learning outcomes, higher graduation rates among children of immigrants, increased creativity, as well as higher levels of abstract thought and reason. All right, Danya, do you want to finish this slide?
Sure. And the one thing that is worth highlighting is that students who earn the Massachusetts Seal of Biliteracy or demonstrate success through the Language Opportunity Coalition Biliteracy Pathway Awards have the opportunity to earn college credits upon as they matriculate to particularly the Massachusetts state colleges and community colleges. So that's in addition, other than it's an additional pathway to earn college credit beyond just the AP path. We also know that language learning benefits executive function, and there are further cognitive benefits. And for sociocultural reasons, in a multilingual world, it really benefits all of our students to bring with them into their post-secondary careers, college or professional careers, the better understanding of multiple cultures and multiple languages. So the next slide shows the Language Opportunity Coalition Pathway Awards.
Yeah, so this year we're going to be giving the STAMP assessment, which is a language proficiency test similar to the APPLE that we gave last year, to students in grades 8, 9, and 11, and 11th grade as well, and a handful of seniors when we have like those 4 or 5 mixed classes. So this is a test that assesses reading, writing, listening, and proficiency levels of students. This test is taken during their world language class block. And hopefully, like last year, we might get some funding from Jesse. We've applied for a grant, and now we're just doing the waiting game here. So we have 2 types of awards that we will be awarding this year. We have the LOC Biliteracy Attainment Award for middle school students who earn an intermediate low or higher on all 4 domains, and the LOC Biliteracy Achievement Award for high school students who earn an intermediate mid or higher on all of the domains. Unlike the Massachusetts SEAL, the LOC awards do not have an MCAS requirement, which is that 472. So in the lower right-hand screen, lower right of the screen, you're able to see what the certificate will look like. All right, so of course it'll have Reading Public Schools on there, the student's name, English, as well as their language. Next slide, please, and Danya is going to do this one. Thank you.
So the biliteracy, the LOC Pathway Awards lead to provide information and data for students to better understand how they can achieve and grow in proficiency to attain the seal of biliteracy upon graduation. And so it's a transitional step, and it starts in the middle school with the language programming there, and highlights all of the students who are succeeding all the way up through the pathway to the seal of biliteracy. Part of the proficiency testing goal is that every student learns what they need to do to level up in each of the domains: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And as you can see at the bottom, we've already got some SEAL winners. We have Jackie Berner and Corey Kehoe, who are modeling the medals that they will be wearing upon graduation this coming June.
Great. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Danya. Did you have something else?
I was just going to say, so, and now you're going to see a list of students who we already know are going to be earning the awards based on their previous testing. As we said, we're going to be testing again in March. So we're going to see these names, the number of students on these lists grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have the ones on the left who have earned the awards, and on the right, you have the seniors and a handful of juniors who will earn that seal of biliteracy upon graduation. So far, we have seals in French, Spanish, Portuguese, and even Swedish. All right, next slide, please. And then on this slide, you have some quotes. I'm not going to read them to you. But as you can see, these young people really recognize the doors that being bilingual or multilingual opens and value people from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds in Reading and the wider global community. I really thank you so much for having us tonight, and we really look forward to continuing this. Anything else to add, Danya?
No, I'm just excited to share. Last year, we were awarded $13,000 in grant funds to help facilitate the implementation of the testing, and we're hopeful that we'll be on the grant list again this year. But we know that the district is really supportive, and we appreciate you having us share what all of the wonderful things are that our students are doing with multilingualism and the SEAL and the work that will get our students there.
I second that.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions from the committee?
That's great. Thank you.
No?
Thank you.
Dr. Milichewski, anything to close?
And I'd just like to thank Dr. Mahoney and Mr. Ryan for coming and presenting tonight. I think the reason why we wanted them to be able to come and share, I think we're twofold. First, we wanted to celebrate and recognize all the students for their tremendous accomplishments. You see all the students' names listed. We put them out in a couple of different formats. That's a tremendous accomplishment, we think, for all the students that reflect years of hard work and dedication in learning another language. And I'd also just like to thank, to share this tonight too, because we think this is something that our community should really get behind and celebrate as another metric of a piece of tremendous academic achievement too. So we wanted to be able to make sure that the community continues to see these awards out. So I'm sure you'll be hearing more from our team over the next couple of months, especially in March, as more students earn the various awards. And just a huge congratulations to the students, very, very well deserved. And thank you to the teachers who have been an integral part in moving students to the point where they are considered biliterate.
Okay, so we have to do a procedural thing that I forgot to do 12 minutes ago. So the joy of remote meetings, school committee has to do a actual roll call to call us in. So with that said, Chuck? Here. Sarah?
Here.
Sean? Here. Aaron?
Here.
And Tom here. So a little bit out of order, but we got it done. Okay, so let's move on to our consent agenda. And a quick note on that is last meeting, we notified of the minutes for 10-5, and we had prepared them, but we forgot to include them in the packet. So we notified them again and included them in the packet this time, including the minutes for 10-19 as well. So consent agenda has one additional set of minutes. So with that said, I'll move that we approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second? Seconded by Chuck. Any conversation or question or corrections on anything in the consent agenda? Okay, seeing no, we'll go to roll call on this as well. Chuck?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Tom, yes. Okay, so that's moved on. So now we can go to reports. And we have Sachi here with us and Emily online. So let's start with our students and tell us what's going on.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Sachi. So in RMHS, our Student Advisory Committee is meeting regularly. We have 5 elected board members, about 15 to 20 students that are working with Mr. Wise and Ms. Callanan to bring topics in the areas of budget and policy to the forefront on topics that can directly improve and impact students' lives while at RMHS. I know recently we've been focusing on a lot of budget concerning stuff like air conditioning, fixing up the bathrooms and such, and additional water stations. So, yeah, if Emily has anything to add.
Yeah, so then we've elected 5 Sachi and then 3 seniors, and Timmy is another board member. Highlights from this past week is that the HBCU panel at RMHS, the HBCU College Fair in Boston, and visit to Metco headquarters for over 50 students is being planned. At the HBCU College Fair, student Jamar Celestin was accepted on the spot and offered a $12,000 scholarship to Claflin University, so that was huge. Also, close to 450 students in grades 10 to 11 took the PSAT at RMHS in mid-October, which is an entry exam for students considering a post-secondary education. With the quarter ending, there's some stress, but good stress that's preparing us. And some big things happening is that on November 8th, we're having a navigating transition to college for students with learning differences. So at 6:30 in the RMHS Media Center, the Director of Learning Strategies and Student Success at Northeastern University, Jennifer Newton, will share helpful information to parents and students who are beginning to think about the transition to college. Topics discussed include seeking appropriate support, navigating disability services, necessary documentation, and other things. This event is open to parents, caregivers, and students, so it's a great opportunity for those with learning differences.
Great, thank you, Emily. Any questions or comments from anybody?
Thank you.
I'll just say this with, I guess, Jess in the room and a few others. I mean, I was able to attend the HBCU college, presentation here at the high school. And I thought it was phenomenal. I think they did a really good job of kind of opening eyes, and I heard feedback from quite a few people that they are thinking of things that they weren't thinking of before coming out of that session. So that was awesome to see and amazing. I think the 4 college reps that came kept it real to them as well, very real. And also, just kind of, frankly, there was a lot of alignment and empathy about where, the challenges that they deal with and whatnot. So I think it opened up a lot of eyes, and I think a lot of the kids that left that room have different views on where they're going afterwards. So I just want to thank Lena, put it all together with Curtis and team here, but I just want to thank everybody that did the work there. So, and Emily, thank you for highlighting that as well. Okay, so let's,
I wish Emily good luck in the state tournament coming up, too.
there you go.
This weekend, I think, right?
Volleyball?
Yeah, we won our first round, so now we're in Sweet 60 and we play Longmeadow hopefully Tuesday.
Yeah, that's a ways off. Didn't the soccer team have to play Longmeadow last year and drive halfway across the state or something like that? Yeah, I think the cheerleading team won as well on Monday night. To me, that came up today at the meeting, to me, I was saying, and they don't know when their next competition is yet, but that's coming up soon too, so we'll celebrate excellence in all forms that it happens, right? So, great. Congrats, Emily. All right, so let's move on. I think Dr. Stice, you're next on deck.
All right, thank you very much. We have some exciting partnerships coming up and meetings, starting with tomorrow morning. We are hosting a providers breakfast that Erica McNamara and Mary Juliana helped organize. So some of our local service providers, doctors, everybody is going to come and join us and learn a little bit more about Reading Public Schools and what we do. On February 6th from 5 to 6:30, author Phyllis Flagel is going to come and be talking about why middle school matters, and she wrote a book called Middle School Superpowers, and it's going to be sponsored by the CPAC, and we really want to talk about a lot of those middle school specific issues, and so it's going to be open to the public, and look for more information coming on that. We also have some really great preschool trainings coming up on November 30th. We're going to be doing a de-escalation training. Kelly Decato and Lisa Studer are going to be doing the de-escalation training for all of our community pre-K partners. And Terry is going to be doing a series of trainings for preschool families, RISE and community families, really around what do you need to know about your your preschooler, and how do you develop language skills, and what are some behavioral expectations? So you can expect to see some information of that coming out. We had 2 exciting grants that came in over the last couple weeks. One is the Safe and Supportive Schools grant. It was a very competitive grant, and we got $10,000 to be able to continue our work around building our social emotional learning and safety protocols. And thanks to Mary Juliana, we also were able to get the School Behavioral Health Funding Service Expansion Award. I think I got that right. It's SBHE. And so we're actually able to hire some more social emotional support that's going to focus with our MLL students specifically to really help them gain access to our community. So we're really excited about that. And finally, I just wanted to do a little shout out to Tara Herlihy, who's a teacher at Coolidge, who's been coaching our unified basketball team. They're finishing up their season, and it's been great. And we also have Sharilla Lestrade and Jess Ayer, who are running our Best Buddies program at the high school, and really partnering with John Fruto at the Y and Carl McFadden to make sure that all students have access to all activities, and it's really exciting. So we're really excited about all that work that's happening.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the committee?
No, I will add, the Unified Sports team has an Instagram account people can follow too if they want to. So
Yes.
we can send that out maybe in the.
Okay. All right, so Dr. Hardy.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I wanted to give you 2 quick updates around professional learning. As you know, that's an important area in our strategic plan this year. We have an important day coming up on November 7th. That is one of our in-service days where all staff participate in professional learning. So I'll be excited after that to give you an update on how it goes. Just so you know, our theme this year is empowering belonging, nurturing inclusive classrooms for academic excellence. Our keynote speaker will be Lisa Drennan, who previously has visited Reading. I believe it was at the library for the CPAC.
Yep.
And we are bringing her in because we believe that part of ensuring belonging and making sure that all students feel that they are included in very meaningful ways in their classrooms is to make sure that our staff are on the same page with that. And so that will be sort of our kickoff meeting and our keynote for the day. And then our staff will have the opportunity to participate in some vertical meetings, which are really important. It's really the nice thing about the full in-service days is that staff have the opportunity to get together, where normally on early release days, sometimes schedules don't quite line up. So we'll have some vertical department meetings that will enable us to have some really great collaboration. And then also our building leaders, as part of their professional learning plan for their staff this year, they will have a good chunk of time with their staff to continue that work and to bring their entire staff together, paraprofessionals included, on this day. So it is really an exciting day for us, and I look forward to filling you in on it afterwards. One other piece of our PD plan this year that was a little bit different that we worked with our middle school leaders to develop was some choice PD for our middle school educators on the early release days. So we're having a balance now of the department meeting time, which is when teachers can have that content PD, with some choice PD where educators at the middle school level can come together across department. During those times this year, we actually have 4 of the early release days dedicated to Choice PD. And our overarching goal for that time is that we want teachers to be introduced to a variety of successful evidence-based strategies that help meet the needs of all students. I'm really excited that we've had some wonderful partners who are leading these Choice PD sessions, and our first meetings on Friday afternoon went really well. I'll just give you a little overview of what our middle school educators are learning about. So we have a session on fostering equity and belonging in STEM education. We also have a session that's looking at inclusive education through the lens of social justice. We have a session focused on tech-infused universal design for learning, and then a session that focuses on navigating trauma-informed practices. I was able to visit all of the sessions on Friday and was really impressed with the work of our presenters and teachers. I really want to give a huge thank you to our presenters who have put together these workshops, and it's been exciting to see that we have not only teachers here from Reading, we're utilizing our coaches, also our community partners. Erica McNamara, who's here in the audience tonight, is one of our presenters. So a big thank you to those folks. I do just want to quickly read their names to acknowledge them, because it's a tremendous amount of work for them to put these workshops together and to also design for the staff opportunities, ways they can try out the practices in between the sessions, come back together, have the opportunity to share how those strategies worked, further refine. And because of all of that work, we're able to offer our teachers PDPs based on those sessions and the work that's happening. So I just want to acknowledge our middle school teachers, Molly Pelletier, Matt Darling, and Robin Ferrazzani, our math coaches, Lana Montero and Alyssa Nelson, our community partner, Erica McNamara, and also our STEM coordinator, Marianne Lynn, who have really stepped up and put this new PD option in place for us. As with any of our PD options, we will monitor and we will gather teacher feedback to see what works, and we will continue to refine. But we're really excited to have this opportunity now in place in Reading Public Schools.
Great, thank you, Dr. Hardy. Any questions from the committee?
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Milichewski.
Yep, I have one update, just like to do an introduction and welcome. So you see here sitting on the side is Ramsey Merritt. So some of you may have met Ramsey. So Ramsey is a first-year doctoral fellow at Harvard Graduate School of Education. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ramsey, and I'll tell you about the work that Ramsey's leading, just so you can maybe be seeing Ramsey around over the next several months. So Ramsey comes to us most recently from North Hollywood, California, as a director of curriculum instruction. Prior to that was a 3 to 6 math teacher, spent some time in the New York Department of Ed, also taught in a bilingual class. Ramsey's bilingual in Spanish as well. Also is a founding board member and treasurer of a new nonprofit. It's called Educate, Radiate, and Elevate, which provides free tutoring to low-income students in Chicago and Houston, which started back in 2021. Ramsey also has some time outside of the ed world. Ramsey worked for the New York Times as an international operations manager, newsroom support supervisor, researcher, and page designer. In the first year of the program that Ramsey is in, which is a 3-year program designed to support leaders to become systems level leaders, Ramsey's jumped in on a bunch of different projects and initiatives in our district, has spent some time just like being around our team, then has also spent time in schools. One specific project is helping to build out our new math coaching model. So to help do that, Ramsey has jumped in on the ground level at Parker Middle School, has been providing some direct coaching to some teachers, has actually started providing some direct interventions at times to students and supporting, as well providing some thought partnership to our coaches, to our STEM coordinator, and is helping us to think through how do we build out a model which is new to us. Ramsey was required to stay on for 1 semester, but is going to actually be staying on for the year, which is exciting. I feel he's just started to build relationships, start to get to know our community, so I think he's primed to take on more. So we're meeting actually in just about 2 weeks to help map out the rest of the year and figure out which projects do we want him a part of, which projects do we want him leading, and how can he really support our district and with bringing his background, his expertise, and his leadership, and also how can we bring value to him as he continues to grow as a leader too. But just want to thank Ramsey. Out of all the places you could be, you're here with us in Reading, and we definitely much appreciate your leadership and appreciate how you've jumped in right away to support our community too.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Thoughts? No? Sachi, I think I told you this earlier today, but you can leave at any point in time, or you can stay the whole meeting, so.
I have a good half an hour before I have to go.
There we go. Wanted to make sure you knew that. So we'll move on to liaison and subcommittee reports, and we'll start with our locals, and we'll give Aaron and Sean a pre-warning that will come to them. But Chuck?
So the charter review met, but nothing school-related. So.
Great update.
That's hitting Sarah right where she wants it, yeah.
Trying to play by the rules.
There you go.
I was being genuine, not sarcastic. The Killam School Building Committee met on Monday night. We reviewed at a high level just kind of questions and discussion around the request for services submittals we got for design firms, then discussed the process, which goes to MSBA. So we couldn't debate or anything. It was just kind of we did receive 4 great submissions and just talked through next steps. We talked about Killam School Building project website and next steps around that to make sure the community is informed and has access to all of the information they might be interested in, and just talked about next meetings.
Okay, great.
I can share just a tiny bit on that too. Myself, Fidel Meltez, and also Carla Nazar will be going with 13 members from MSBA and the board to hear the designer bids and to try to narrow that list down to see how many we want to interview. Likely a smaller list of somewhere, likely 3, and then we expect it's November 21st. We go forward and actually have the chance to interview those design firms and expect to have a designer on board in early December too.
Great. Okay, so Aaron or Sean, either one of you have a report?
No report.
Nothing on my end.
Okay, no reports. That makes it short and simple. One quick thing I was reminded of here, just as we were talking about all the different teams that have won recently, our band has once again done really well again. And so I don't know if where are they in the competition cycle? I'm looking at Mary Ann. Do you want to answer that question?
I know, I don't have a kid band anymore, but they have finals this weekend up in Lawrence on Sunday.
Okay.
And they won the home show on Saturday. They swept the categories, even color guard, and they won 2 color guard matches. It was still that much better than everyone else.
Nicely done, and thank you for the reminder.
Sorry? I think they performed at 11:47. Yeah, I don't know, I haven't looked at the net.
We'll see if that one's live streamed.
Needs permission, though. It's not like you can do it.
And the other thing I was going to say as well is I don't think Emily said this, but maybe I'm blanking. And we have the performance, the fall performance coming up here at the high school, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend and the weekend after that. So the next 2 weekends, Something Rotten will be here at the high school.
Get your tickets, it's
on
hilarious.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you haven't got your tickets yet, get them, because it's a prime performance they put on here all the time, so. All right, other than that, I don't have any other liaison reports, nothing from Select Board or Finance Committee. I guess Select Board is working to hire a new town manager, and that will impact us from a school perspective at some point, so. Okay. All right, so let's move on. I'm going to motion that we take item E2, the elementary and secondary school improvement plan presentations and discussion, out of order. Do I have a second?
Second.
What's that?
Public input.
Public input.
Oh, yeah. Well, there is plenty of public comment here, I suppose. Good point. So we're going to table that motion. Anybody from the public want to make any public comment? No. They're all here for the same thing. I knew that. So now I'll go back to my motion. I'm untabling my motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Sarah. Okay, so roll call vote. Chuck?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Okay, and Tom, yes. So 5-0, we are moving forward to the school improvement plan presentations, and I will share it right now.
Awesome. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to School Improvement Plans. Just to share a couple of notes before I turn over to our leaders. First thing I'd like to share is just a thank you to all of the school councils from our respective schools. You know that one of the roles, the primary roles of a school council is the development of a school improvement plan. We have several members of our respective school councils here, so just appreciate all of the collaboration, thought partnership, and support in that process. Secondly, tonight you're going to hear a very high-level overview of the SIPs. You'll hear some slide on the middle school and the elementary schools on commonalities, which is about 3 to max 5 minutes, and then you'll hear a 3-minute slide on each school of sort of what are some things that are unique to their school. Obviously, we know that's not really enough time to dive deep into each school improvement plan, but we just wanted to give you a flavor of what's in the plan at a high-level overview, and I also know the community always appreciates hearing from our school councils, our principals, and our leaders. If you are interested to hear more, there's a couple of things. First, you can look in the packet. All of our school improvement plans are in the packet. Also, you'll see in the cover letter for the school improvement plans, there's a sheet that has a date and a time and a Zoom link for each school where they will be presenting their school improvement plans to their respective PTOs. This is when they will speak for much more than 3 minutes in detail about their school improvement plan. It'll give you a chance to answer, any questions that you may have. This is open to anyone across the community. So if you have, for example, I think about it at Coolidge. If you're at Coolidge and you have a family at Coolidge, but you may be going to the high school next year, maybe you want to go see the high school presentation, or if you're at Wood End and you're Birch and you may be going to Coolidge next year, maybe you want to go see what's happening at Coolidge. So it gives our community the chance to maybe see what's just happening across our different schools. So we welcome and invite you to join those meetings as well. So with that said, I think we're just going to invite our leaders up. Whoever is speaking, I think we'll ask just to be seated at the chair, because I think that's probably the easiest way to make sure everyone can hear you. And then I've asked them, please, we're going to keep to 3 minutes. So if they seem brief and short, that's because that's what we've asked them to do. It's not because they are not excited about the content in their school improvement plan. So, all right, so we can jump right in. You can go, Tom, are you driving? You can go through the first slide, which is, again, we're going to talk about the commonalities in elementary SIPs, and then go each school. So we'll invite up our elementary team to move us forward. That way the cameras can all pick you up.
As far, you can come all the way around as well.
The whole team
A couple
can.
people can sit there and, yeah. All the way around next to Sachi, too. There's one more seat.
Hi.
She doesn't bite.
We just pull up one more, too, if we want. Thanks, Tanya.
Well, I am really excited. I'm going to be presenting the slide on the commonalities for the school committee. And I think as we go through the school improvement plans, of course, you're going to see some very unique things from each school, but you're going to see some things that are in common. So I'll kind of go over those for you right now. And we're broken into 2 broad categories. The first category is ensuring safe and supportive learning environments for students by bolstering a sense of belonging and growing connectedness for all students. Under that broad point, we have 3 things that you're going to see in common at each school. You're going to see some school-based initiatives focused on a sense of belonging. you're going to see that we're leveraging staffing to support social emotional learning to create a strong sense of belonging for all students. And you're going to see that we're utilizing school-wide assemblies and community events to build positive school culture, belonging, and connectedness. That's going to look a little different in each school. At JE, you might see them talking a little bit about student voice. At Barrows, you're going to see that they're piloting the Second Step program. At Birch, you're going to see us continuing the work with the community building circles and connecting to the community with our composting initiative. At Killam, you're going to see that they're really focused on family engagement, and at Wood End, you're going to see some great things going in with staff PD. So you'll see some differences, but all focused along those commonalities. The next one is ensuring strong academic outcomes through coherent instructional systems. We're going to support the implementation of ArtCore and illustrative math programs. Of course, those are two programs that ArtCore is in its second year. Illustrative math has been here for a couple of years too, and we're rolling those out, and we're doing some really great PD around those with our teachers. We're going to be implementing the new early literacy screener, Amplify and MClass. We've started that, and we've been working with our reading specialists on that currently. We're focused on training and utilizing staff for intervention and supports, and we're bringing in our district-wide coaches. Some of those positions are new this year, and they've showed benefits already early in the year. And our professional learning plans are aimed at supporting staff development. That's our commonalities.
Great, thank you, Dr. Burnham. I think we start with Barrows.
We do. Alice, I get to always go first. I was thinking actually we should reverse alphabetical order one year. So we've kind of broken it up in between the tiered social emotional supports and the data systems to highlight. Oh, thanks, Tom.
Make sure it's picked up.
Thank you. Is that better? Is that helpful?
One's
Or is
for
that
RCTV, one's for
Okay,
the
so I
room,
can't even, I'm used to hearing the
you're fine
voice.
either way.
Okay, so for Barrows, as Steve mentioned, a big push this year is for us to start revisiting other ways through curriculum of how we want to support our students through social emotional learning. And so we are piloting Second Step, which actually Wood End is doing as well. We already had that program to be used for our REACH program, so we thought that was a natural research-based program that we wanted to try. We're getting amazing feedback from our teachers. In discussions last year with their school council, actually, that's where we started talking about how are we going to support students in their ability to learn studentship skills, especially coming out of COVID. And so this was one way that we felt like we could respond to that. We wanted a common language for our staff. We had been using Open Circle, but that is no longer a viable curriculum to use. So this was one we want to try. We're really excited about it. We alternate it. Well, it's more like every 3 weeks, 3 times a month, and then we alternate it with our assemblies that we're doing small class instruction. Specialists are going in, so they're getting to be a part of the lessons and community with the classes as well. So that's what we're doing for our social emotional. And then 2 highlights from Barrows for our targeted instruction is one, we've added data teams, which we did not have prior to this year or for a few years. And so we're now meeting 2 times a month with each grade level with either our reading specialist or math coaches are coming to work with us looking at data to see how we can leverage all of the new data that we're getting between ARC and IM, MCAS scores, and then we roll those conversations and analysis into our work that we do with our vertically with our staff in our staff meetings and into our professional development and our instructional leadership team. So we're really seeing connections. We're not just having little conversations in different areas. We're pulling all that together, and we're really streamlining everything so that our work is targeted for our students. The other new thing that we're doing, which we're really excited about, is we've started it in 3rd grade, where we are now with the IRLA, and we can assess students. We're able to really see where everyone falls, and we're starting to cross classrooms to do our toolkits in our small group instruction. So that way, if we have some students that are really progressing a lot faster and they might be their only person at that level, now we're able to bring them together so they're able to have these conversations about books and the curriculum together rather than being in group of 1 with their teacher, and then the same for students that might be in a smaller group elsewhere. And this is fluid, they're moving different classrooms, they're getting to meet different students, so we're really able to once again meet the need and be really effective with our approach. The teachers seem to really like it. We're also able to look at that data during our data team meetings and make sure everyone one is where they're supposed to be. So we're moving things as quickly as we can to close any gaps that we have. So those are some of our highlights at Barrows.
Great, thank you. Dr. Burnham, I think comes back to you now, right?
Comes back to me, okay, Birch Meadow. So before I jump into the slide, I do want to say thank you to my school council members, my parents, Sharice Rabb and Kate Hurstman, and especially my representative here tonight, Amanda Haley, have really volunteered a lot of time into this school improvement plan. And my faculty reps, Lisa Azarito, Cindy Marte, and Leanna Gagnon as well, have put in quite a lot of effort into this, and we're really proud of it and excited about it. A couple of things I'm going to highlight for you. Our school-wide professional learning plan to support staff learning is really a big part of what we're doing. And one of the things we're trying to do with this plan is to build a culture of classroom walkthroughs, where as the teachers are working with coaches and we're identifying things that are going really well, other teachers will be able to be covered and be able to walk through those classrooms and see what's happening and collaborate with each other to learn from each other and really turn it into a professional learning community throughout the building. So we're excited about that. The other thing we're excited to build on is the composting initiative that we started last year. This year, we rolled it out to all grades. So last year, we had gotten from grades 2 through 5. This year, we really took a leap and pushed it to kindergarten and first grade, which was a challenge. It was a challenge. But watching them learn how to compost and watching them start to take stewardship of their community has really been an amazingly powerful process. And it's also had some opportunities in the building for leadership with our older kids. As they've worked as composting ambassadors and been in there volunteering their time to work with our younger kids, it's increased the connections throughout the building. It's increased connections with community members who've come in to volunteer. It's really had a web of outcomes, far more than I anticipated when we started it. So we're really happy to be continuing that work. And the last thing that we're doing is, and I think one of the most pivotal things is we've worked hard as a building and with our PTO to increase the accessibility for all events that we do as a school for all students. And that goes across the board. So that's working with food service to make sure if we're doing an event after school, all student allergens are taken into account. So anything that's served is accessible to every single student there. Changing some of the timing of our events to maybe be during the school day. So no matter where you live or what your after-school commitments might be, you can still participate. And our PTO kind of ramping up their fundraising to make sure all of our transportation is paid for so that no student and family has to pay the cost of transportation when we go on a trip. We really think that's going to have an impact on connections, and we really think that's going to have a big impact on attendance over the course of the year because kids will feel more connected to the community. So we're excited about those three things, and my thanks to the school council who helped me put it together.
Great, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Great to see you all. It's nice to be on this side of the table rather than presenting. I feel like I'm part of the team. So to focus on our JE specifics, for our sense of belonging, you probably remember last year we talked through kind of piloting two initiatives, one being our school store that was connected to our PBIS, and the other was our student-led groups that were just kind of a fun opportunity to get students together around shared interests. So those pilots were very successful, and we're looking forward to expanding them this year. When we think about our school store, we've gathered some feedback and from our students and our community, and looking forward to getting some student voice and ownership and leadership of that store. So we have school council, our student council members who are leading that every Friday for our students who are showing their positive behavior and really stepping up as leaders in our community. We're also looking to redefine what it means for that positive recognition in our PBIS for our 3 to 5 students. So we know in our younger learners, we're looking for our peace signs and our, working within our classrooms. And as we get older, the expectations get higher. So what does that look like as far as, in-class discussions and things of that nature to really take ownership? Secondly, we're working to build out our student-led groups to have sort of a six-week cycle. So we have some 4th and 5th graders that are running student groups in the morning, and that's around book clubs, or community service events to get students excited about a book that they're reading or how to make JE a better place. And then lastly, as far as our sense of belonging is really just connecting our families. So our staff are making personal calls to all of our parents and guardians, caregivers at the beginning of the year to make that touch point personal and share just a highlight about their student within their school day. When we think about our second initiative, which is around our instruction, our data shows that we're strong within our Tier 1. We have a lot of great professional development with our IM and math, and our goal as a school is to really bolster our Tier 2 supports. So we've had our math coaches come in as well as our literacy specialists, our school adjustment counselor to really define what does Tier 2 look like at JE and how are we meeting the needs of all of our students. Right now, in the month of November, we have a math professional development where our teachers are learning more how to meet all the needs of their learners within that math block. So we're really excited about that there.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Ms. Fulton.
All right. So I brought Tanya McGuire, who's a wonderful fourth grade teacher. I want to thank Katie Cole, who teaches kindergarten, is on Zoom as well, part of our school council. So the first thing is increasing some family engagement, but also looking at what that two-way communication looks like. And instead of just communicating operational and logistical pieces of our day-to-day school life, we really want to share academic resources, find out what families need. There's definitely been some conversations about how we can share about our Tier 2 instruction, the roles within the school so that everyone knows what's going on and feels like they understand what their child's day looks like. So I'm trying to increase that in the newsletters. That also relates to that second bullet point where we're increasing as a whole school, whether it's teacher communication or from the office, using home languages that are appropriate for each family as our multilingual population continues to grow. And considering that like conferences coming up, we're having some really thoughtful conversations about how we invite all families in, make them feel welcome, and make sure we have the resources so we have interpreters and other resources available. And then that second piece is the leveraging staff resources and also the roles and schedules within the school. So it seems like it might be a small bit, but I think it's something that as a school council, we're really looking to maximize and think about how we're utilizing our paraeducators, how we're utilizing our tutors. We have a lot of really awesome resources in the people in our building, and we want to make sure it's really maximizing and impacting student learning. So the coaches from the special ed lens, so the literacy coach for special ed as well as the inclusion coach have been, I know I'm new to Reading, but I can speak to say they've been great additions. They've really been integral parts of our data team meetings, and when we need ideas, they're always willing to kind of jump in and give us ideas for students, but also for teams. So I'm really excited to keep working with them. And do you want to just talk about the data piece quick?
Yes. And so just briefly, I want to add on to what Ms. Fulton just stated and say that our Tier 2 committee has been working to analyze data across pieces such as our SST, which is our student support system, referral data. We've been looking at MCAS data for grades 3 through 5 and our current fall assessments to look at where we can maximize our resources and really meet the needs of all our students.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Schwartz.
Great. So Wooden is really excited about the work we're going to do this year. Looking at the first initiative around ensuring equitable and safe learning environments, Wooden is bringing some outsourced and some in-house professional development opportunities that are really going to be working towards supporting inclusive practices and building teacher capacity and our paraeducator capacity as well to ensure that students are getting what they need at all times. In addition to that, professional development this year, our instructional leadership team is working really hard with our school adjustment counselor who is new this year, as well as our building-based teams to create a bank of resources that will bring some awareness of different cultures and ethnicities and backgrounds to our students. And the resources, we plan to highlight some different holidays and heritage months, as well as important and influential people from different and diverse backgrounds, just to name a few of some of our focus points. And our goal really is to tap into the Wood End community and bring the diversity within it forward-facing for our students. So looking at community members who may have affiliations, for example, for this month, during Native American Heritage Month, one of our O&M who actually works in our building, she has a connection, her family is Native American, so we're working with her to try and bring some of that awareness into our building. When looking at instructional systems, we're implementing cross-classroom conferencing and small group instruction as well. I think Barrows mentioned that also, which really helps us efficiently provide targeted instruction that will not only meet the needs of our students, but is really based on the data that we're collecting. And our building as a whole, as well as the district, have really worked to create that data system. So we have a lot of data that we're collecting and really using it effectively. This year, one of the things that I'm super excited about, which our staff is also excited about, is we're piloting a specialist team teaching model in grades K through 2. So our library media specialist, Lisa Norcross, works with our art teacher as well as our music teacher, and they merge their content areas and they teach at grade level at the same time. So those two departments are working, they're teaching kindergarten one day a week, first grade or second grade, and they're really, it's really fun to see sort of the library media portion of it kind of merge with the art and the music side of it. And we have a student who is performing tomorrow at our all-school assembly. Actually 4 students, 3 are singing and 1 is playing piano, thanks to sort of that merger and the confidence that those teachers are instilling in our students. So that's super exciting. And then we're really focused on ensuring that all of our support staff, which kind of goes with the inclusive practices and some of the PD opportunities that staff will have, ensuring that everyone is always working with students on either their IEP benchmarks or their ERLA data or sense of belonging data that we collect, or math assessments, so that we're building the capacity of our paraeducators and other support staff to really support our students with whatever it is that they need. And the district is helping, as Sarah Hardy said, on the 7th to provide some professional development for our paraeducators, and we're also doing that in-house, so based on our building-based needs, whether it's AAC devices that our students need support with, making sure that all of our paraeducators who work with students who have AAC devices have the professional development they need to work on those goals. So really just trying to use our building-based needs and support our paraeducators to support our students best. So super excited about the work to come, and I'm glad I'm on year 2 and I've got a better sense about what M is about. So.
Great, thank you so much. At this point, we plan for a Q&A from the committee, or anybody else really for that matter. So, looking in the room, and then Sean and Aaron, if you guys want to take yourself off mute as well, if you have questions, now's the time for us to ask them. So, Chuck, Sarah?
No, just excited to hear about the work ahead this year.
Okay, so that'll mean I'll ask a bunch of questions then. Much to somebody's chagrin here, probably. So I think Ms. Gallegos and Ms. Schwartz, I think I told Dr. Milczewski I was very excited to see the small group kind of base instruction there, the fluid groupings concept. Ms. Shelburne, you may know that was in place in Joshua Eaton back in 2015, and for one reason or other, did not continue, but not because of lack of success. So I'm very looking forward to hearing the positive nature of the success there. Can you talk a little bit more about what drove that? It sounded to me like it was really the data and the need that certain groups of students really could be optimized together to learn together. But if either one of you could pick that up and talk about what drove that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I can answer that. This idea that we had, I mean, I knew Reading used to do this a bit, was really born from our teachers talking about what students need and looking at the groupings, because with ERLA, we can really kind of rack and stack where everybody's falling and what they need as far as their power standards. Not like if you're a high, medium, low reader, but really target the lessons, like those foundational skills. So when we were looking at that and then matching what the teachers need to do, how often they could meet, we thought, gee, if we could actually cross classrooms in a grade level, we can be much more efficient with our work with the students. So instead of having maybe 5 small groups in my classroom where 1 or 2 of them are me and another student, I can now work together so that those like single or 2 in each come together in a group. So now they're having really awesome conversations with their peers, which is what we want, and cutting down the amount of groups that we have across one grade level. So now we're getting to meet more frequently with our students. So instead of seeing, one group, maybe 2 times, we can get them 3 or 4 times. It also allows the teacher to get, as they're learning the curriculum, to go deeper faster, so they really get to know the texts and the lessons and the questions, and then they'll move. So by the end of the year, they'll still all be experts in all of these different small group lessons, but they've been able to really spend their time in working on them with the students. So that's where we are. When we first, like 4th grade, we thought we don't really need to do it. We have enough groups, the way that the numbers fell when we look at the data, that we don't have to do that. But 3rd grade definitely worked for us, and then we're using that as a model. And then when we meet with our data teams, we're reassessing and saying, okay, how, we don't want them just to sit there. We're looking at that. We're seeing, faster movement, and that's how we're utilizing those data teams too, to make sure that we're holding the teachers and students accountable for growth. But it really was a teacher-born concept for us this year, and it worked really well with the way Irla shows the data.
Great, thank you.
I don't know if there's anything else you
Anything
want
to add, or is Chief?
I think Alyssa did a nice job of that. I don't want to say piloted, but we worked towards this a bit last year with our reading intervention programming. So working with the reading specialists and our tutors that are in the building to do some in-class support across the classroom. So we sort of piloted it on a much smaller scale last year with just our reading program, and now we've expanded it to K through 5 at Wood End, and we plan to implement it with math as well. And it's, for us, it allows, just like Alyssa said, to just get more kids what they need more often, and with a teacher being the person who's doing the teaching. So I'm super excited about it. Our teachers are excited about it. It also gives them an opportunity to work with new kids and kids to see a new teacher, and there's just a lot of pros to it. So.
Great, yeah, another way to get another adult in the building that they can connect with and that they may not otherwise have. Dr. Burnham, for next question I have for you is kind of more of the budget question. It particularly popped out to me that, funding of transportation for all students popped out, right? And I'm very grateful that the PTO is willing to jump in and help out that, but I also feel like there's an obligation for us that we should make sure we support the funding for transportation for our students. So can you talk a little bit about what the challenges are there and what how that transportation is coming about, for what kind of events it's coming about? Is it really more like field trip type things, or what are the types of things is it, and how do we make sure that
happy to talk
we
about
think
that.
about it from a budget perspective as well?
It's amazing when you put together an event, you just don't realize that the biggest cost is going to be transportation, right? Until you put it together, and then you look at the cost, you're like, holy mackerel, it's going to be $9,000 just to get kids to the museum. And that's just the transportation cost. So we have some big events planned. Last year we had a PTO event, our Turkey Trot, which brought in a ton of money, and we have that planned again. Which day is it? It's this month?
Yeah, it's November 21st, and one of the initiatives that we have is for having the ability for all students in inclusiveness, and so we work with the PE teacher, Ms. McCracken, and we're actually going to hold it during the day, because the challenge that we had last year was that our Boston residents, the bus came and they couldn't take part in the Turkey Trot. And then there was, like Dr. Berg said, after school activities and whatnot. So this year we decided that all students will participate, whether or not they fundraise or not, but we have up their fundraising because the PTO goal is, like Dr. Berg said, to fund all buses for field trips. So I believe we were paying, I think, $4 to $5. They were subsidizing, so we were paying about $5 per child.
So we're doing a few different things. We're shifting the time to maybe not have to transport anybody, right? So something like the Turkey Trot, we don't have to do any transportation because we've shifted to time. The transportation's already happening. So we figured out how to do it for no cost, really, just by a time shift. And then there's some other things that we're doing where if we can raise enough money, and we think that we can outright pay for the buses for some of the field trips through the PTO fundraising. So there's a few different ways we're doing it, some through time shifts and some through fundraising.
So that brings to memory, and I know Josh Wheaton had the Jaguar jog today. I saw the streets were blocked off as I was driving by. brings to memory a conversation we had with Curtis about, making the Friday bus be later for our Boston students in particular. And if we were able to do that, I don't know if we have done that yet, or if we're still thinking about it, but if we're able to do that, would we potentially reshift some of these events to be a Friday after school or something like that instead? Or are you happy with what you're thinking about in that regard?
I'm always willing to brainstorm, and I think that's a great thought too, is to shift something so that, at a 12:45 dismissal, if that's where we are. And that's something that we have done, I think, in the past, we've tried to do. But I think all those options are great options, and we can keep looking at them all.
Okay. And I would just, I would expect you're seeing the same thing at the other schools as well. So if there's things there that we need to think about as we go into budget season, especially if it's a recurring, this is part of the school culture, like the turkey trot, the Jaguar jog are, and things like that, and we want to open it up for all the different students, let's figure out what that looks like, so we can at least make some decision size-wise and not just assume that our PTOs will pick it up, even if they will, because some of them, they're all awesome, really. But it brings to mind all the equity conversations about PTOs paying for things as well, so the more the district can support that, I think the better off. That's one person's opinion of the 6 of us. But I have a feeling I see some nodding heads, I'm not by myself. So the more we can understand that as we go through the budget cycle, the better off we'd be. Sean or Aaron, if you have any questions, please just jump in and whatnot, and otherwise I have one or two more questions or points I think I'm going to raise.
I'm good for now, thanks.
Okay. So I think just as a general point of feedback, I think Dr. Milichowski kind of hit it with a start point about the work that's necessary to do this. I think it's really important. And I think the collaboration that happens between you and the teachers and the parents is really important. And I think studies have shown time and time again, the more involved your faculty, the more involved your parents are, the better the school is going to be over a long run. So you all setting that right, foundation of communication and collaboration, I think is critical, which is part of the reason why we asked all of you to bring somebody else from your school community to the meeting, because we wanted them to be part of this as well. And I just want to thank you and thank them for all the work that they've done there. One observation as I was looking through some of these, first of all, there's a lot of detail in them. And when you break them down and present them in detail for your school communities, you're going to do a lot of speaking, so bring a lot of water. But the second thing I think is I want to encourage people to think about the outcomes in a SMART goal type fashion as much as possible. Some of them are a little bit like, I used the word squishy when I was talking to Tom earlier today. How are you really going to measure that? How realistic is that outcome? What does it mean to say 97% if you don't know that you're at 90% now? Right? Is going from 90 to 97% in 1 year achievable? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. If it's 95 to 97, maybe that's achievable. But without the context, it makes it a little hard to understand how much growth you're expecting as you look at some of those outcomes. The same thing could apply to some of the other things that you have in there as I look through that. And I'm going to hit my last point, and I'm also going to highlight Ms. Marchant a little bit here as I do that. I've said this before, I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it 3 more times. Closing the achievement gap, we can't just say we're going to close the achievement gap, because how can you do that? You can do it by lowering the top, and you close the achievement gap. That's not what any of our intent is, and I know that's not what any of your intent is either. We have to figure out a better way to say those things in some of these key documents, because they set the foundation in terms of what our expectations are. So we want to rise our non-high needs, or all students, and rise our high needs even more, right? So that's closing. So everybody's rising, right? And I think that the way we cast that language is really important as we think through some of these strategic documents. And I would encourage us to think about that as we write them out a little bit. So hopefully that makes sense. But I want to, again, express my appreciation for all the work that's been done in putting these together. Anything you want to add?
We get to talk plenty on these. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate coming too during a busy time of the year too.
Yes. All right, so I think we're going to move on to our middle school principals. Are we doing all secondary at once?
No, we're just doing middle school.
And thank you to those members of the school committee that came tonight as well.
Good evening.
Good evening, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. Rochelle's starting us off, so.
Yes. All right, so we are going to start by talking about some of the shared ideas between both of our school improvement plans. So the first one is our shared curriculum work. Both schools, we are working on the Math Pathways Committee. That's a district-wide initiative. We have our science curriculum review going on. We have our middle school literacy leadership team and our world language curriculum review happening. All of this work is going on to ensure that all of our students have access to high-quality curriculum in all subjects. And we have some additional PD for our literacy leadership team through the Hill for Literacy program. We are also increasing our targeted support and therefore our achievement for students. We are using different data, such as grades, our iReady benchmark, and our MCAS and attendance data to really look at how students are progressing. We're very much appreciative of the iReady diagnostic because it's something beyond MCAS that we have to look at as a formative assessment throughout the year. We are also encouraging some data chats with teachers as well as students so that students take on ownership of their learning as well as the teacher. We have been really purposeful with our use of team time as an intervention and enrichment block, and this is a result of our scheduling committee that we were a part of last year. And over this summer, teachers from Parker worked together to really create some consistency around our team time for intervention and enrichment.
Okay, item number 3 that we are speaking about tonight in coordination is our professional development that is offered both as part of our staff meetings as well as our early release days. Sarah Hardy really teed us off well by explaining the new Choice PD offered to our middle school teachers, which has been very exciting and very well received. So we're very appreciative for that, as well as the leaders within who are kind of natural members of our community who have really stepped up to make that happen. We are coordinating PD around meeting the needs of our marginalized students, and we're really saying who in our community might not feel as if they're part of the community or that they're properly supported within the community, and that could be a lot of different types of populations within our community. So we're working with Karen Hall, our multilingual learner coach here in the district, to provide PD for our staff on our November early release days. We actually have the pleasure of having 2 in November at the middle schools. And the third thing in that category is we are each using an anchor text as part of our staff meeting professional development. And I guess to Tom's point, when we look at how our students are performing, we do identify that there are higher needs populations within our buildings who are underperforming relative to all students. And so we each are doing some more targeted development on how to reach the needs of our specific populations in our schools through the use of an anchor text. And lastly, it was nice to hear the coordination and see with our school improvement plans about building a sense of belonging across all of our schools. And as we know, students are much more likely to achieve and want to engage in their learning when they feel a sense of community and belonging within each classroom and a connection with their teachers. So this is ongoing work that goes hand in hand with academics. So we have our advisory program, which is so important in our middle school model for giving students something every day that is a connection with an adult and a personal relationship. We are excited that Challenge Day will happen with both schools this year for all of our 8th grade students, and that's an opportunity to build empathy, perspective taking, and kind of be proud of each individual identity. We continue to offer field trips, enrichment activities, and after-school programs to provide students with those fun things to do as part of a community, as well as groups where they have similar interests. And lastly, we're really working on purposeful engagement and community building with our Boston resident students and their families. And are really excited to be working in partnership with Jerica Santiago, our new Metco middle school coordinator, who's been a pleasure. Okay, I will continue on for Coolidge highlights. Speaking more specifically about the specific text that I've chosen to use, that is a text based on, with a focus on executive functioning. We know executive functioning ties in with many students with disabilities, ADHD, as well as trauma, but it's something that benefits all students. And we have never been explicit about teaching executive functioning at Coolidge, and in many of our conversations, we realize that that is getting in the way of students being able to really lean into the content and do the learning because the skills are not there or aligned in our school. So we're building staff capacity so that they are then able to work more directly with students. And we're also utilizing Michelle Goldner, District OT, to help us with some PD on November 17th. Authentic partnerships with parents. Parents, it's not like we've left parents behind in the past or not given that thought, but we think there's more purposeful work to be done in aligning and streamlining our communication with parents, our engagement with parents, really getting ahead of things, making sure parents are hearing positives about their students and knowing what's happening in the school, and not waiting for communication to happen when there's something to react to, which often creates less of a working relationship between parents and teachers. So we're trying to really front load relationship building so that when we get to the point of challenge, that it really does feel authentic and parents and teachers working together. And part of that is, sorry, I've lost my train. Part of that is also being really purposeful about our Boston resident families and how we are providing community events and engaging in those and leveraging their voices and engagement in our school. And lastly, related to the sense of belonging and connectedness, when we have looked at our kind of students who have left Coolidge and not felt a part of things or not felt that their needs were met, or we felt like we didn't maybe serve kids to their best, that was often related to not really knowing, or maybe they were in a feedback loop of kind of constant improvement, be it on an IEP or having certain challenges that they were always working towards. And in retrospect and reflection, we feel like there's more we can do to get to know students and their strengths and leveraging strengths so that they end up having more of a positive feedback cycle and feeling that that all students know what their strengths are, that their strengths are being leveraged in the classroom, that they feel reflected and seen in that classroom and known as learners and as people, so that they don't leave Coolidge feeling like they weren't known or maybe just were always being asked to improve rather than celebrated for the strengths they have. So that's Coolidge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I start, I just wanted to say thank you to Erica McNamara, who's also here as a member of the Parker School Council and is here in support of that tonight. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is our anchor text. So our professional development with our anchor text is focused on culturally and linguistically responsive teaching and learning. And the other part of our PD that we are doing this year is new. We are piloting some professional learning communities that allow for teacher leadership. We're building the capacity of some of our leaders to create shared ownership and a sharing of best practices. And it's focused on the following areas: learning acceleration versus remediation, calibrating on student work looking at student work protocols. That's a part of the cycle of inquiry model. We're looking at collaborative problem solving, language-based learning disabilities, and those two points that I just brought up highlight some of the inclusion work needed for two of our special education program groups that we have at Parker, along with advisory, which is our goal around SEL, belonging, and anti-bullying initiatives. So why are we doing this work? Part of that is to refute deficit thinking, build a pedagogy and skill set to improve classroom instruction, clarify what is specifically meant by culture while simultaneously giving educators an awareness of some of the noted cultural and linguistic behaviors of our underserved student populations. And then it's also to build our high-quality instructional strategies that are universally designed so all of our students are capable of reaching grade-level standards with firm goals and flexible means to reach those goals. The other thing we are doing is focusing on improving our structures for general education, intervention, and supports to ensure that all students have access to targeted instruction through the following initiatives. We, as I had mentioned before, are developing our consistent team time practices that focus on our intervention and our enrichment and extension. We have been strategically scheduling our reading and math interventionists so that they are providing some push-in support for certain classes. And we have looked at how we can provide extra math intervention period for grade 8 students. Our data supports the need for more math intervention, both from a tier 1 approach and a tier 2 approach. So this enables more support in the classroom, along with pull-out support for targeted students through the use of a variety of formative assessments, including our iReady data, our student work samples, and grades. And then finally, we are leveraging coaching, collaboration, and partnership. We are part of the DESE's SEB, Social Emotional Behavioral Academy, and we are in the process of conducting a needs assessment of our social, emotional, and behavioral supports. And then I have follow-up with a coach from DESE SEB Academy as well. We are partnering with the Lynch Leadership Academy to provide a professional development series and follow-up coaching for the Parker Middle School leadership team, and that focuses on the following topics: systems for instructional improvement, including teacher coaching, systems for data-driven instruction and decision-making, and leading effective teams for instructional improvement. And then finally, we are leveraging our math coaches that are new to our district this year to provide job-embedded instructional support for our math teaching staff.
Great, thank you both so much. I'll again open the floor for committee members. Any questions?
I just had a comment. I was excited to see the explicit executive functioning work that you're doing at Coolidge. That's, to your point, benefits everybody.
Yeah, and I forgot one part in my parent engagement. Feedback did come from CPAC this summer, which was also very important for us all to hear, that at the table of IEP meetings, parents weren't always feeling that they were heard and really truly being seen as knowing their child and their child's needs. So that was also reflected in that goal.
That's great. Thank you.
I think that hits close to home for a couple of us. Again, Aaron and Sean, jump in if you have any questions or feedback on any of this. My, Mr. Rubino, my question here is in focusing on the math supports for grade 8. Why grade 8? Why not grade 6 and 7?
So we noticed that we had some extra room in the grade 8 schedule where we were able to look at how we could provide some targeted support for our grade 8 students. And being that they are going to be heading on to high school next year, we wanted to focus on that as getting them ready if they needed that in their schedule. So that's why we chose grade 8. Ideally, it would be nice to be able to provide it in every grade level, but given what we had, the constraints we had, that was where we were able to focus.
So, I mean, just to build on that then, if constraints can somehow be adjusted, is it something that you would potentially consider, based on success this year with grade 8, to move down to 7 and 6?
Yes, definitely.
And
yeah.
Obviously, the reason I ask that is our next meeting is Math Pathways,
Yes.
and grade 8 is almost too late for our Math Pathways as it stands right now, so the sooner we can help and remediate some of that, the better off we would be in my mind. So at least that's where my head was going with the questions.
Yes.
I also appreciate the focus on executive function. Personal experience being going to your CPAC feedback point, it's even weirder being in this seat and then being in that seat, because as a parent, you're a parent first. That's your first thing, but you're one of usually 7 or 8 or 9 people in the room. I told Jen this too. It's even though you know the teachers have the best in mind, you know you're also one of 7 or 8 or 9. So if there's a vote, you lose. Obviously, you have the final vote because you signed the forms, but it becomes a bit of a challenge. And the more we can show that kind of empathy in the room of your voice matters and is critical to this process across all of our schools, the better off I think we'd all be, and that helps a lot. So I want to thank you for recognizing that, and I'm sure Maria Morgan and Eunice and the team gave some pretty heartfelt feedback on that process. So
Yes, they did.
okay, thank you both. A lot of work and a lot of your team's work went into this. So I echoed my same thanks that I gave before, but thank you again.
Thank you.
Sean, Aaron, anything on your side?
No, none.
There we go. Okay.
Thank you.
And last but not least, our high school team.
Is this the one that works?
You should all work, hopefully. Again, they're for different things. This little one is for RCTV, this one is for Zoom in our room here.
Well, thank you for having us this evening. I want to thank both Marianne Downing and Eileen Manning, who are here as members of my school council, and they're returning members, so they've been very helpful in guiding me along the way this year as I assume responsibility at Reading Memorial High School.
So I don't have any commonalities because we're the only one. But the highlights for the high school, our SIP is long at the high school, and both of these ladies have helped me refine it. We've gone through it with the school council, and we're going to continue to talk through it throughout the school year as well. But some highlights that I would like to bring forth are, one, last year, our whole school did a professional development or professional learning around Zaretta Hammond's Culture Responsive Teaching in the Brain text, and it was wonderful professional development for our whole staff. But one of the pieces of feedback that we received at the end of last year is that teachers would like some choice. High school teachers are very diverse, and diverse in their needs, and diverse in where they are in their careers. And so this year we have teacher leaders coupled with administrators leading different professional learning tracks that teachers had the choice to select into. I'm leading one with Mike McSweeney, who is the head of our English department. Ours is around an anchor text, and then connecting that anchor text around deeper learning to instructional walkthroughs in the building. Some are around grading for equity, some are around literacy. And so teachers were able to opt in, and even after their first session, some teachers actually said, you know, I actually think this one would be better, and we shifted it around. And so we're tracking that, working with Dr. Hardy to make sure that teachers are getting the most out of the professional learning this school year. And these are school-wide initiatives that crosses over departments. And then we're also doing professional learning in our departments, within the departments as well. So that's our first highlight. The second one is that both of our world language and science departments are in the process of our curriculum review, which will go throughout this school year, also led by Dr. Hardy, and as well as our teachers and our department leaders. And they're looking at our curriculum, looking at alignment with the most current standards, making sure that we're using correct resources or the best resources for our students. And then at the end of that curriculum review process, determine if we need to make any changes and updates to our curriculum in those areas. We're doing a similar work, slightly different but similar, with our Math Pathways Committee. That is a secondary Math Pathways Committee, also led by Dr. Hardy. She didn't write this, I promise, I did it. And that is both middle school and high school, and looking at specifically different on-ramps for students at different ages as they come through the high school and the middle school to get to the highest level math that they can get to at the appropriate age level, which we all know students develop very different times in their lives. And so we want to try to develop something that gives kids a lot of options, both in middle school and high school as well. Third is the work that I started last year around innovation career pathways. As you know, we were granted 2 pathways, one in advanced manufacturing engineering, another in information, and within that both computer science and our digital media pathway. We did apply this year to expand and add a clean energy pathway. We were one of 6 or 7 or 8 schools in the entire state that were allowed and awarded to move forward in the clean energy pathway. Because we already had existing pathways, and as well as healthcare and social assistance. And so with those 3 applications and approval of different pathways, we've brought in $125,000 in grant funding to support the work of our teachers, as well as initiatives and experiences for our students, as well as other new equipment and supplies coming in to really make what we're doing very state-of-the-art and connected to present industry standards and developing students' employability skills. So really exciting work that we're doing. And simultaneously, we're working to expand dual enrollment as part of that with Middlesex Community College, but also with UMass Lowell, who's part of our advisory board for the Innovation Career Pathways. And we're also expanding our senior internship program. Last year we had, I think it was close to 90 students in the senior class that participated in internships. All of but maybe 3 were actually paid. Most of those were through DESE grants coordinated by Mass Hire in the areas of STEM and education. We also worked with an organization called the Work-Based Learning Alliance, where our students did virtual internships over the summer, also paid through the state. And so I think the key factor of students being paid in a lot of ways makes it accessible to all students, or the element of it being virtual. I had one student in Italy doing the internship virtually. I had kids all over the place, and they're paired up with students from other districts, which was pretty amazing. Some of them were working with companies in totally different states, and it was all monitored by the Work-Based Learning Alliance, which is a not-for-profit organization. And so eventually that will roll into the Innovation Career Pathways, but also will be open to all seniors as they move towards their senior year. And last but not least, the last 2 years, Reading Memorial High School has had consultants come in to work with them on looking at the internal schedule. Last year, the school worked independently. I was part of that at some points, but we are pulling that committee together with the goal of adopting a new internal schedule next year, as long as it meets the needs of our students and also the needs that are identified by the consultancy company and of our staff. And so there will be a lot of information coming out from the school, surveys to parents, surveys to students. We have already surveyed the staff, but I'm going to make sure we all are on the same page about what our objectives are in changing the schedule, that it's not just to change the schedule, but it is specifically to bring, wider swath of options for students in course selection or exploratory different courses that they want to try that right now they might not be able to because of the way their schedules are locked in. And so we're pretty excited about it. It's going to be a lot of work, but we're taking that on. And I'm working, I do want to give my school council members if they wanted to add anything, but I don't think they necessarily do. But I don't want to ignore you either. But those are the highlights from the high school.
Okay, great. I open up the floor to questions again.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I get to talk to Jess all the time, but Maureen and Marion, I'd just be interested for someone who's been longstanding school council members, is what, about this year, this, school improvement plan excites you? What in there do you think that the community should be excited about that's happening in RMHS?
There is certainly a jam-packed school improvement plan for the high school. I'm amazed that you all can do that much in 1 year. The innovation pathways to me are really exciting, and I look forward to see more of that roll out. While I haven't had a kid participate in that, my son did participate in the internship last year, and that was a fantastic experience. I hope that the courses within these innovation pathways that sound so interesting are things that will be available to students that aren't in those pathways as well, and that we find a way to make that balance.
I'm just going to add a general comment about working with Ms. Callanan, that I've been on the school council with 2 different principals over the past, now 3, counting Jess, in the past 4 years. And this is already the most productive school council I've been on. I mean, we got through the handbook with all the changes, and we got through the school improvement plan, and it wasn't like, oh, I'll just go off and do it and you guys can improve it later. We had active, dynamic discussions with a group of members at multiple meetings. So we're making a lot of progress just even now as of the beginning of November. And I'm just very impressed compared to, it's not disparaging the last 2 principals who were like bookended by COVID, but I'm really impressed just with the way the school council is running. And I was on the Parker School Council in the past and sat in on Joshua Eaton. And so this is just the most productive one I've sat on. So you can all feel pretty confident.
That's great. Okay. So I have a question about something that I think might be, that I perceive as absent, but I might be missing it. There's a ton here a ton about things that are happening, and PD that's working and whatnot. But I don't see in particular, and again, I might be missing it, so point me to it if necessary, something about, in particular, the same thing I just said before about closing gap. I don't, we still have at the high school a pretty large gap for our high needs groups as well. I don't see anything here that's targeted to help those students. I know it's 10th grade, so it's well down the path, right? So, but was there any conversation about anything along those lines that is specifically, what are we doing to help our low-income, high needs, ELL, et cetera, students to close the gap with regards to achievement? I know there's one little thing in there about, access to higher level courses at the end, but I don't know that I see like a plan for that. And maybe a piggyback to that is academic support that we had in place last year, and whether that is still happening or it's been modified. I think it's been modified a little bit to be more like the math coaching team process that was there before. But if you can add or comment on that at all, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Great question. And part of why that isn't something that's drilled down in our school improvement plan is I believe that's just work we always have to do. And until our data reflects that all students are achieving and achieving at the level we all want all students to achieve and equally, we're not there. And so I think that's the work that educators are always engaged in. Specific things that are happening, we do still have the academic lab. We need to work on student accessibility to the academic lab. We are doing prep courses for science MCAS specifically, and that has started in September, maybe the beginning of October, and we'll run through the science MCAS, which is important because that's content specific. So if you are giving students the MCAS in biology, which is typically the MCAS that we use for STE, they're not in biology as sophomores, and so you need some practice there. They can only take the retake in the content area that they took as freshmen or did not pass, even if they pass the class. So we're prepping that now. If students do not do well there, they'll be ready to take it in Intro to Physics at the end of the year because they're in physics now, or the physics MCAS, I should say, not Intro to Physics. We're doing targeted work with our other students that did not meet expectations on, which are a very small number, like 3 and 4 on math and English MCAS, and we're also doing targeted work with Meredith Flanagan, who's a new assistant principal, is working with each department, going to each department and working on the DCAP, or the district curriculum accommodation plan, I always say it incorrectly, reteaching that to teachers because it's just something that you forget from year to year, to be honest, and making sure that teachers know that they can extend different interventions to students outside of and prior to an SST referral, outside of a 504 process, outside of an IEP process. And so I believe that through that work and the constant education and discussion around what we can do for students will meet the needs where we have a lot of gaps. And so these courses and innovation pathways are still accessible to all students, and that is one of the goals, that it targets our high needs students, also targets, females, because it's in STEM, and there's a national shortage or disparity of females in the fields of STEM. But that is something that I always have my eye on, and it's something that we're constantly talking about in our instructional leadership team, in our special education team meetings, in our SST meetings, our CASEL meetings that happen every single week.
Great, thank you. Okay. Seeing no more hands raised or questions or comments,
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all for the time and effort you put into this. We very much appreciate it. And I don't think you need anything else from us. So.
Closing remarks, to thank all of our school leaders and our school counselors one more time too. And I just have to say too, Eileen, did I call you Maureen, call your daughter's name really quick? Did I just realize that?
I wouldn't even notice.
I was
I can't tell you how often.
I was just thinking, maybe I didn't, but I think I did, so I apologize. I was reading. But I'd just like to thank all of our school councils and leaders for their work on this. And I think the two areas that you can see consistently throughout is one, sense of belonging. Just our students are not going to be successful in school unless they feel connected, unless they feel valued and feel seen in our school communities. And hopefully you see that reflected in our school improvement plans. Two, I feel really confident that, especially for us in our third year, that this is the year where there is the most sort of attention and focus on instruction. I feel like there is the work in all of our schools is instructionally focused. I think all of our leaders, their work is around instructional leadership. So just thank you for, amidst everything on your plate and in your roles, truly focusing on instruction, because that's what's going to move the needle in academic outcomes. So appreciate all of your work on this and very well done. Appreciate the committee's support.
Thank you all. And with that said, we'll now move on to the YRBS findings. And Erica, come join us either here, there, whatever makes sense.
Pick a mic,
I think I'll go here, if that's okay, if you
That's
don't mind
fine.
driving slides.
I don't mind driving.
So before Erica begins, I just do a little level-setting and introduction.
Okay.
We are so grateful for the work she's done and the partnership. And the results that you're going to see tonight are really important data points for us in the work that you've heard a lot about tonight. One of the things, not only is this a district focus, it's actually a desk focus that we continually are working on this. And so tonight, as you've heard, we're really working on that sense of belonging and the social emotional learning and building community partnerships. And so we are continually looking at this data and using it, finding research in terms of best practice. We've had many meetings with our middle school and high school leaders, as well as central office with Erica, to really drill down in this data. And then we'll continue to work on next steps. And we've been really grateful for Ramsey, who's been feeding us a whole bunch of research and ideas as well, so that we're really making sure we're doing the right things. So tonight, we're going to hear a lot of data. And just to kind of level set, tonight's not the night for problem solving, although that is where we all want to go. We've had to take a step back and say, first step, really just look at the data and let's sit with it. And then over the next year, you're going to hear a lot of what we're doing to address that and to continue to address the trends that you see in the data. So I just wanted to really thank Erica for her hard work with this presentation and putting things together for us.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stice. Appreciate that. So hello, everyone. I'm Erica McNamara. I'm the director of the Reading Coalition for Prevention and Sport, which is based at the Reading Police Department. I want to say a special thank you to my colleagues at the police department who have been supportive as we've been building this presentation and working with the data for the last 6 months. They know when it's YRBS time because I have many stacks of papers all around my office. We can go to the next slide. I just want to share a little bit about our survey partners who really have been focused around our consultant, which is JSI, or John Snow Inc. They are the consultant that is hired by Leahy Health, who pays for our survey, to make sure that they analyze the data as well as define the question areas for us. Mystic Valley Public Health Coalition, our partner regional coalition, also paid for additional analyses and were part of the survey process this year. Parker Middle School and Coolidge Middle School were our middle school samples, and we're so appreciative to the principals and their staff who served as proctors, as well as the high school and Principal Callanan for working with us as we built the survey process over the last year. Just want to say a few words. We do benefit from Leahy Health paying for the survey, and so we want to say a special thank you to Leahy. That is not a guaranteed, so every 2 years we do want to make sure that we are reevaluating if we need that funding in our budget. So it is something to kind of keep in mind. It's around a $10,000 figure just in terms of a budget driver, just so you're kind of aware. Leahy has been great at funding the survey for the last 6 years, or 3 cycles, because we do it every 2 years, but it's not a guarantee, so I just want to point that out. Next slide. Tonight, I'm not going to get into the larger survey set. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey is really drawn from 2 big surveys, the Centers for Disease Control survey set, which is the national survey that's done in all of our states at the middle and high school level, as well as the state survey. We are not going to compare a lot of results tonight for you, because one of the things that we did during this survey process is change the wording a little bit of each of the questions, so we can't do direct comparisons based on what we have available for national and state data. There is
some additional analysis and context for you in some of the JSI reports, but they're 2 years behind. So I felt it was important to just share with you what we know now, and then we will come back to you with additional comparisons as that data comes in from the state and the nation. Just a little bit about the timeline. It starts about 8 months before we actually do this presentation. We get together with the Middlesex League superintendents. They define if they want to move forward with the survey process, identify a consultant with Leahy Health. Then we move to a process of identifying district leaders who are going to work on the survey questions. All of the survey questions have to be tested questions, so questions that we know have been asked before, either in a national survey, a state survey, or a larger population survey. We do have some leeway in recommending changing of questions, but there are also things that need to be agreed upon by the Middlesex League. So you will see that there are some areas that we chose to ask a question. We get 10 kind of extra questions that we can ask that are specific to Reading, and then there's some other questions that Melrose may choose to ask that are slightly different than us, but overall we have a large data set across the Middlesex League that we can rely on. We spend most of the summer doing report review and analysis. JSI provides us with frequencies as well as data reports. I'll get into those a little bit later. It's about 700 pages of documents, so it's a lot of material. So I'm just giving you brief highlights tonight, but if anyone wants more detail, we're going to be sharing more detail as we go around and do presentations in the community. And as we get into presenting findings, this is the first official presentation of the data. We will also be presenting data as we meet with all of our stakeholder groups, including PTOs at each of the schools, as well as any community-wide presentations, and then meeting with stakeholder groups that may have an interest in a particular area of the data. Next slide, please. Just want to say a special shout out. We don't have this data unless our students participate and our parents are supportive of the process. So I want to say a special thank you to all of the parents that supported having their student take the survey, as well as all of the individual students that took the time to answer the questions. It's over 100 questions, so it takes some time to go through the survey. And to all of our survey proctors, as well as our JSI liaisons who worked with us when we had troubleshooting to make sure the survey was accessible. We also made a couple other tweaks to the survey to make sure that it was accessible in different reading formats for students that might need that as well. I want to say thank you to Dr. Seiss for making that recommendation. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Crystal Melanakis-Garay, who has been part of the survey process before she moved on to her new role in Chelsea. And she was my partner throughout the process, and she made some really astute observations that really guided the question development as well as the analyses that have gone into this presentation. Next slide, please. So overall, our survey results is about 1,522 students. They indicate risk and protective factor percentages that are within 1% to 2% of our regional data set, which is the Middlesex League or 11 communities. The Middlesex League school districts are experiencing similar patterns of risk overall. So I'm going to share a little bit of those comparisons, but in the JSI reports, you can see exactly what the Middlesex League rate is compared to the Reading rate. But I do want to caution you that we do have a little bit of a difference in our sample size based on some of our students' participation in the internship program. So I just want to make sure that I go through some of those comparisons, but also caution you not to make too many broad-based assumptions on those. Next slide, please. So our source data, we have a nice full report of all of our Reading results, as well as a shorter presentation that is in slide format that will be beneficial for parents, as well as a regional report that looks at each of the Middlesex League communities. Those will be available on the Reading Public Schools website. And we just received one additional report that we're very excited about, the Mystic Public Health Coalition paid for a cross-tab analysis of our substance use data, our bullying data, sleep data, as well as other protective factors, so that we can get a better sense of if a student's exhibiting or describing that they're reporting a specific behavior, where are they also experiencing other risk? And that information can be very helpful in when we design interventions and look at best practices. So I'll share a little bit of that tonight, but we'll be diving deeper into that in some of the stakeholder groups. Next slide, please. So as we dive into the results, I'd like to just kind of level set a little bit around this idea of talking about risk and protective factors. I've been doing this work for about 25 years, and as a parent, I know that sometimes seeing the results of young people talking about this level of risk can be really upsetting and hard. And so I want to acknowledge that when you see it in a population-level survey like this, it can be a little bit difficult. But also know that the risk is going to happen whether we ask about it or not. And so I think it's important to be brave as a school district and ask these questions and let young people share, and then take that opportunity to move our district forward. So we're going to talk about those different ways. One of the other things is that two things can be true at the same time. So we can have a young person who may have a particular set of risk behaviors and may be doing beautifully in their academics, but they may be struggling with depression, and they may be struggling with another area. So those two things can be true at the same time. And the other piece is that our risk and protective factors that happen amongst adolescents reflect our societal pressures, our norms, and everything we've gone through. So when we think about young people not getting enough sleep, or young people struggling with substances, or young people experiencing higher levels of mental health challenges, they're also reflecting our adult community as well. And those are areas that you will see in the adult research is not that far off. So it's important to know that young people are part of our culture, and what you will see in the results is very much reflective of our culture. Next slide, please. The other area I want to talk about is just, I think, a little helpful for parents. When students talk about what they know about risk, they talk about it from what they know about their peers, so their direct peer group. So if their direct peer group doesn't use substances, if no one in their peer group is struggling with a mental health challenge, their awareness of that particular issue may be small. It may be only what they know through their lived experience. On the opposite, if young people hang around with young people where a lot of that risk behavior is happening, they may think all young people are going through that particular issue. So when we look at a population level survey like this, students are often surprised to see the numbers in certain areas, and parents are often surprised because they may only know what's going on in their child's peer group. So one of the things I want to kind of share is that this is one of these things we walk through when we share the data with students, for them to get a sense of, they may think that there's actually more risk behavior happening than is actually happening because of their perceptions, and vice versa. The other piece I want to share is that risk behavior often happens as an unhealthy coping try. And what I mean by that is that young people try out a lot of different ways to feel better, and sometimes those can be unhealthy coping mechanisms that we've taught them in our society. And one of those is substance use, and another is sometimes not getting enough sleep or not eating well. And those are all things that we struggle with as a society that are not unique to our young people. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the high school sample, and this is why I want to just point out in terms of comparison to some of the league data. We had a great sample size across 3 of our grades. Our 12th graders were amazing in participating in their internships, and the timing of our survey did not allow them to participate. So we had a very small 12th grade sample this year. We will adjust when we collect data the next cycle because we had such higher participation in internships this year. But it does affect the data and how we perceive change over time, as well as comparison to the league data. Next slide, please. I also want to point out some sample characteristics. We asked young people a number of demographic questions to get a sense of who they are as people, and also that allows us to cross-tab data and also sort data. So a couple of areas that I think are important to know about is how young people identified their race, their gender identity, their ethnicity, as well as their sexual orientation. And one of the things that we definitely saw on this survey at the middle school and the high school level is more young people identifying as gender diverse, and also a sexual orientation other than straight. And that's an area that has come up, and when we talk about sense of belonging and meeting the needs of young people, so you'll hear me kind of talk about how the data differs in those characteristics, not to isolate those students and talk about them in a different way, but to really highlight why those needs might need to be tailored, and we might need different interventions, and we'll talk about that as we go through. Next slide, please. The middle school sample was pretty strong across all 3 grades. We had a high level of participation. One of the things to note is a lot of students take the survey, and then we kind of cull the survey down to the sample. So we had a high rate of participation, and then JSI takes that data and does their own data cleaning process, and then we end up with our final sample. Next slide, please. For the middle school sample characteristics, similar to high school, we can see a little bit more diversity that's been growing in the area of race, gender identity, ethnicity, as well as sexual orientation. One of the reasons that we point out these characteristics is so that as we go through the data, you can understand why we might point out a disproportionality in those characteristics. Thank you. Next slide. So I want to start with safety. So young people are asked a few questions around, did they feel a certain way about coming to school? Did they feel unsafe on the way to or at school? And the reason that question gets asked is there can be lots of reasons that go into young people's perception of safety. So for this particular area, 5% of our middle schoolers in Reading and 7% of our high schoolers reported not attending school at least 1 or more days in the past month due to feeling unsafe on the way to school or at school, and that was a little bit higher than in 2021. Okay? Lots of different characteristics go into the perception of safety, so that is something that we will get into in more detail with our stakeholder groups, why young people are feeling unsafe, what are some of the areas that we can control, what are some of the areas that we need to build with young people, and what are some of the cultural shifts that we need to make. Next slide, please. So when we look at some of those sample characteristics that I mentioned, multiracial students, including Hispanic and Latino students, had a much higher rate of missing school due to feeling unsafe. So that's where we want to kind of look at what are those characteristics that are making it harder. Is it they feel less connected at school, or there's a transportation challenge, or there's something happening on the way during their school route. So there's lots of different factors that kind of go into that piece. Also, female and gender diverse students also had a slightly higher rate of missing school due to feeling unsafe. So 2 areas that we want to work on. We also asked young people to give us open-ended feedback as part of the survey. So young people were able to share quotes or areas that they want to focus on in our district, and we have 200 of those open-ended responses, and those are great sets of feedback. So I just shared a few of the quotes as we go through. I won't read them, but I think it's important to know that they underscore most of the data highlights, whether it's around inclusion or looking at diversity and a sense of belonging, and a lot of the stuff that came up in those school improvement plans. Next slide, please. We also asked young people a series of questions around discrimination or their perception of perhaps being treated unfairly based on a specific characteristic. So there's a couple areas that they're asked about: their race or ethnicity, their gender, their sexual orientation, or their religion. And in this current survey, 2 to 8% of our high school students and middle school students reported that they felt they were treated badly because of one of those characteristics. And that rate was slightly different than it was in 2021. Next slide, please. When we drill down a little bit more, you can see by the different characteristic what the rates look like. The rates are comparable in most areas to the Middlesex League, but there's some areas where we see a little bit of a difference. And so again, these are areas that we want to drill down on, and this is just a starting point, and we need to have more conversations with young people around what did that unfair treatment look like, where did it happen, how can we help, where can we support young people, are they talking to their peers about it, are they talking to adults about it. There's a lot of school culture work that's already happening, and this is just additional data to support that work, but also to dig a little bit deeper and get at what's really going on. Next slide, please. Again, another quote that just kind of draws out the importance of addressing bullying or being treated unfairly due to race or gender or sexual identity. Again, you know, this idea of unfair treatment is really personal to a particular young person, and so these are anonymous surveys, so we don't have the ability to ask the student a little bit more detail, but we can do focus groups and we can follow up with young people as we get into the classroom to talk a little bit more in detail about these broader themes. Next slide. So I want to zoom in on the classroom a little bit to give you a sense of a little bit of the data from a classroom perspective. So one of the areas that we saw in this survey, particular in 2023, is a slight increase in bullying on school grounds in the last year. And when we broke that data down, it looks to be about 3 out of 20 students in any particular classroom would be impacted by having an experience of bullying. And that's about 15% at the high school level, 16% at the middle school level that report being bullied on school property in the last year. That rate is 2 times higher than it was in 2021, and it's higher than the league rate of 9%. So it's an area of true concern, an area that we really want to get working on. And that there's already work on, but an area that has jumped out. I want to say a few words about it. We did additional analysis to look at, of the kids that reported bullying, did they exhibit other risk factors that we might be able to address? And we found that additional analysis showed that young people who experience bullying had higher rates of depression, substance misuse, and self-harm. And sometimes adults may be aware that a child is struggling in one area but not another. So we also look at the data of, if young people reported bullying, did they tell someone? Because oftentimes this behavior goes undetected amongst adults. So in 2023, of the 15% of high school students that reported being bullied on school property, only 8% reported it to an adult in school. So adults can't help if they don't know, right? And that's a tough one. Another 8% told their parent, which is great, and hopefully that parent brought it forward. 1% told another adult outside of school. 9% tried to talk to the person to get the bullying to stop, and 9% talked to a friend about the situation. The rate of telling an adult in school is similar across the Middlesex League. Only 8% across the Middlesex League reported it to their school, so we're not alone in that. It's hard for young people to come forward and talk to an adult about a situation like this. Of the 16% of middle school students in Reading that experienced bullying, 11% told an adult and 13% told a parent. So one of the overarching district goals is to really increase a sense of belonging, as well as increase the number of students that have a trusted adult they can talk to about a problem or a worry they have. So this relationship building and that trust has to continue, but it also has to address things like bullying. It has to address things like self-medicating with substance use, or things like experiencing feelings of sadness or anxiety. It's a complex problem, requires a lot of collaborative problem solving. We don't have the answers tonight, but I do want to say that one of the answers is making sure we have a third place or another way for young people to communicate if they're experiencing bullying or they're experiencing unfair treatment, that they have a way to bring it forward. And so if we know that only 8% are coming to us as grown-ups, we need to figure out other ways, right? We need to figure out another way to expand the conversation, to improve the trust, to make things work a little bit better. And so we're looking at lots of different strategies and what the best practices are. But I do want to point out that we're not alone in this, that as a league, we're struggling with this, and hopefully there'll also be some problem solving with the other superintendents as well. Next slide, please. So a little bit more specifically about the bullying characteristic for high school. For multiracial students, they had a slightly higher rate, and male and gender diverse students also experienced bullying at a higher rate. So that is an area that we can pay attention to and we can work on and gather more information on how we make sure that young people know they have access to supports, they have a trusted adult, and they know how they can safely come forward. Next slide, please. Again, just a little bit more student feedback that really addresses the specific area of bullying and perception of racism that happens in their school. Next slide, please. Next, I want to zoom in on mental health and how it affects the classroom. Young people were asked a question on how they felt about their mental health. Was it not good sometimes, most of the time, or always? And about half of our high school students, at least 10 out of a classroom of 20, reported that their mental health was not good sometimes, most of the time, or always. When we looked at that rate for females, the rate was 68%. For transgender students, it was 78%. And for lesbian, gay, bisexual questioning students, it was 78%. So there's clear differences if you look at the sample characteristics on how young people are impacted in terms of their mental health. So that's, again, another area when we think about sense of belonging and trust with adults, we got to make sure that we have adults that are reaching all learners, all students in our buildings. Next slide, please. For middle school, 36% at the middle school level. About 7 students out of a class of 20 are impacted by their mental health not feeling good some of the time, most of the time, or always. And then we definitely saw additional disproportionality for female students, transgender students, and lesbian, gay, bisexual questioning students. Another area that we looked at was additional analyses for students that reported this area of mental health not being good. What were some of the other co-occurring behaviors or risk factors that they had? And one area that stood out was young people not getting enough sleep. So young people that got less than 8 hours of sleep had higher rates of mental health challenges, higher rates of self-harm, suicidal ideation, as well as substance misuse. So we want to be looking at risk behaviors and the complexity of that, again, the whole child, and not just, okay, let's do a bullying program, let's do a substance use program, let's do this, because we need to make sure that we are looking at where the behaviors intersect and what all young people need. Doesn't mean we won't do a great bullying program, but we want to make sure that we're being holistic in how we address it, because all of these behaviors connect a little bit and sometimes can be co-occurring. Next slide, please. Next slide. I want to spend a little bit of time on some of our protective factors or things that are going really well. 50 to 64% of our students ate breakfast for most of the week on 5 out of 7 days. We are excited about that because if they come to school with a full belly or they get food here and they start their day with a full belly, things go a lot better. We'd love to increase that number, and there's lots of work that we hope will be happening on promoting nutrition, but it is important to know that we've got a lot of that already happening. Lots of high rates of physical activity for at least 1 hour on 5+ days. So 66 to 72% of our students were exercising most of the week. 23% of our middle school students and 66% of our high school students had a part-time job, which is really great for building skills and self-confidence and also earning a little bit of extra money. 90% of our students participated in extracurriculars. That rate is really significant. I think we take it for granted in Reading that we have a high rate of participation of extracurriculars, but if you look across the state, there are some districts that have a rate of 20% of participation in extracurriculars. We're very, very lucky that we have a very strong extracurricular program. I think there's also a lot of opportunity to build more intramural and other extracurriculars that are maybe non-competitive, where more young people can gather and have affinity, and that's an area that I know young people are really interested in. And then we have a high rate of young people being safe, wearing their seatbelt, which is always good. Next slide, please. We talked a lot in the school improvement plans about sense of belonging and connecting to adults. I'm excited to say that for young people, they have that family adult at home. 87 to 91% have at least one family adult they can talk to if they have a problem. 70 to 71% have at least one trusted adult outside of school they can talk to. And then 88 to 90% have a peer they can talk to, which is really, really important because oftentimes young people go to their friends first. When we look at the school level, 69% of students said they have at least one teacher or adult in school they can talk to if they have a problem, and those rates are going up. We saw the rates really drop down during COVID into the 48s, 58s. Now we're starting to see those numbers come back up. There's been a lot of strong work that has happened, and I appreciate all the work the principals and the teachers and all of the staff in the school buildings have done to rebuild that sense of relationship and trust with young people, because it has not been easy to come back through COVID and rebuild that sense of connection, but we can see in the data that it's working. Next slide, please. A little bit about our health education highlights, and then I just have one or two more slides, and then I'll take questions. We asked young people if they're receiving this type of education in their health education program. So we do have a focus in our health education on HIV and STI prevention, nutrition, substance misuse prevention, as well as bullying. At the middle school level, 72% and 71% at the high school level received HIV prevention education. For nutrition, it was 84% and 86%. Substance misuse, 79 and 90%, and then 86 and 89% for bullying. Our middle school health education runs on like a quarter cycle, so not all young people may have gotten a piece of their education by the time they took the survey, so that's why you might not see 100%. But we do also want to make sure that if we're offering a particular type of education in our health education classes, that all young people have access to that information and that they feel part of that learning. If young people are experiencing mental health challenges, sometimes they may want to opt out of a particular part of the curriculum because it's challenging if they're going through something. So we want to make sure that we're offering other opportunities when they're feeling well to get through that curriculum material, or to offer another way to a family to kind of navigate it. Next slide, please. So moving forward, this is just the start. Lots more dissemination to happen, meetings with parents, sharing this at the school level, sharing it with all of our stakeholders that care about young people in our community. Tomorrow at the Providers Breakfast, we'll be asking our health and social services providers to join with us and continue the work of supporting our young people. We have work groups in a lot of different areas, as well as students utilizing the data. So students at the high school use the data in the 9th grade health class as well as the 11th grade health class. They do amazing projects and they dig down deep and find stuff I didn't even know we had in the data. So it's also really exciting to see what they'll pull out of it and the ideas that they have for addressing some of the areas. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, open the floor for the committee. Go ahead, Sean.
Erica, so first of all, thanks for this. We know it's a ton of work, and I appreciate your comment at the beginning that the data can be, sobering and difficult to digest, but it's obviously really important for us as well. Just one question, or maybe it's just a thought to plant a seed for the future. You mentioned having the ability to build in, I think you said 10 kind of our own questions. I'd love, if it's possible, to, in the next round of this, to think about whether we could dig into some of those bullying responses in particular. I'm thinking about the stat you had in there about the students who reported being bullied. I think you said only 8% of them reported it to somebody. I'd love to see if we could maybe try to dig into, and I don't know how much branching logic you can do in the survey, but dig into what were the reasons why students who chose not to report it to anyone did so. Was it they didn't have anybody they trust? Is it that they, were embarrassed? Like, what are the drivers there? I think it would give us some good, information to be able to, act on that, build that into our bullying prevention approaches and so forth. So maybe just a thought or a suggestion to think about more than a question. But thank you.
Thank you. And that's an area that we'll be dealing with more directly in the next few months, asking young people as we share this data, what do you think some of the barriers are why young people don't come forward to their parent or to their school person? And we already kind of know a little bit of that in talking to young people and looking at the research around reporting bullying. They're often worried that adults are going to take it from 0 to 60, right? That it's going to get serious super fast. And a lot of times they want to have a conversation around, I have this situation with a person who makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't even know if it's bullying, but they've said this, or I feel excluded in this group. They want to have the conversation before we get to reporting and having meetings and having it become this really intense situation, because emotionally that's really hard for them to decide, okay, by coming forward, I've now exposed myself and maybe a friend who has turned into someone who feels like they're bullying them. So I think one of the things that we have to look at is making sure that we're building trust with young people. We as adults have to take action if someone is harming another young person, obviously, if we know we're aware of something. But sometimes young people want to talk through a little bit about a situation before they want to kind of fully expose all of the situation. So we need to find ways to make sure that they feel safe to do that, and also make sure we're meeting our obligations as mandated reporters and all of the others, the responsibilities we have as adults. And so that is a piece that we can work on more immediately, but I appreciate the idea of digging a little bit more deeply. Melrose and Wakefield asked some different questions as part of their optional questions, and one of the questions they asked was, have you bullied someone? Not just were you bullied? And 6 to 8% of their students said yes. So imagine the information that you can get from young people who are exhibiting that behavior and reporting it, around why they're doing it. Right? So there's lots of information on both sides to learn, but I appreciate the suggestion, and we'll add that to the list.
Thanks. And I think that behavior that you highlight actually, it's a really great point. There's actually some value. I mean, there's a lot of value in that. That's actually a quite mature behavior, right? To be, to want to address it and sort of, discuss it directly before escalating things. So I appreciate that point that you made. Thank you.
No, I was glad Sean brought that up, because this trusted adult concept is not something we just started talking about. This comes up all the time, and we really need to find out find out why that's not happening, because we talk about it all the time.
Yeah. And in another area, when we ask young people a little bit more as we share the data, I know that in previous surveys, young people have said, that question's a little bit hard, like, do I have a trusted adult I can talk to about a problem? Well, it depends on the problem. And so they'll say, well, if it's this kind of problem, I go to my mom. And if this kind of problem, maybe I go to my auntie. And if this kind of problem, maybe I would tell my teacher. But it's also specific to their situation. And so you may have a young person that has a very strong relationship with their parent and their school and still not be able to come forward around this. And that's the area we want to think about is there a way to create more communication pathways for young people to feel like they can talk? Some other schools have mediation programs where young people, college students or older high school students are involved in kind of helping young people navigate some of their peer challenges. There's a lot of different strategies that are out there, not just training our adults. What we want to do more with our adult community as well as with our student community around how we can kind of rise up and work more on building that positive school climate.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I guess I think the thing that obviously stands out the most to most of us are the significantly higher rates of bullying and unfair behavior, disparately so from the rest of the peer communities. So what is it that's different about the Reading context? And digging into the layers of the data over the different groups, how are different subgroups more greatly impacted? And then I think as we're thinking about how do we improve it, not putting it, just in the school context and on our students, but as a community, what are we doing? How are we modeling appropriate behavior and treatment of others around us? How are we doing that for our kids, for our neighbors, and for everybody else? And how can we, as a broader context, help improve that?
Thank you for naming that, because that's one of the things that I think is important. Coming from the coalition perspective and being part of the police department, we see that all of our community can be sometimes challenged by some of this. We all struggle with negative coping skills sometimes. We struggle with how we interact with each other, and sometimes we don't make the best choices. And so it's really important to look at not just what's happening in an individual school, but what's happening across our community and how we can build that resiliency and those strong supports across the community. And sometimes as adults, we just don't know. We may know what our child is doing, and we may know a little bit about what's going on, but we may not know, like population level wise, that this is happening, or that there's a particular group of students that feel they're being treated unfairly, or feel like they've been bullied, or feel like their mental health is challenged. And so we want to make sure that we're sharing this information, not to scare other people or to upset adults, but really to have an honest adult conversation around some of these issues and what we can do as adults to support our young people. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I just wanted to add one piece, that we're so grateful for this partnership, and some of the work we started last year, we're going to continue as a district to build on this, so we're not just relying on this one data set. Last year, the middle school and high school did focus groups that they really, really felt like they got valuable information, talking directly to kids about specific issues. And bullying would obviously be one we'd want to target. Also doing some additional surveys for students that kind of dig down into those Reading specific questions. So I just wanted to make people aware that we're not just using this one data set, we're continuing to really expand to make sure we're considering all of the different aspects.
And Jillian Gately, the lead social worker, and I are also leading a district team on social emotional learning, so we'll be using the data for that piece and also looking at social emotional learning across the district and inviting in partners from each of the schools to really have this more broader conversation around what are those evidence-based programs that provide the most value for improving protective factors and reducing risk. One of the areas that has become more of an area to work on is this idea of relational aggression, or the precursors to bullying behavior. So the idea of how we relate to each other, how we are kind or unkind, some of those really basic building blocks of relationship and social support. Going through the global pandemic, we definitely missed some opportunities to build some of our social skills, so we want to make sure that if young people have any gaps, that we're addressing that, and also providing overt learning opportunities to really address some of that, and also supports in the community for families as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Erica, for the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stice.
Thank you.
Okay.
Marianne,
Marianne, is there a question?
Oh.
Okay.
Hi, Mary Ann Downing, 13 Heather Drive. I'm not sure which mic. Thank you for all of this data. I had reviewed the 2021 data, and so one of the basic questions I had about some of this and in some of your comparisons, I mean, 2021 was a year coming out of COVID where part of the year was remote. So when you have students reporting on, bullying in the past 30 days or having a trusted adult, was anything taken into account to say, well, yeah, we have an increase, but now we have kids in school versus remote? I mean, you're taking into account that with an increase?
So one of the things that's interesting about this data set compared to the 2021 or the pandemic data set that we call it is that young people reported more bullying on school property in 2023, which makes sense in the sense that they're more in school, right? But one thing we saw that was really interesting is a decline in cyberbullying or electronic bullying.
That was going to be my other question, because you had data on that in 2021, and I didn't see anything here.
We do have it in 2023, so the rates in 2023 are only 5 to 7%, which is much lower. So we saw a flip, so more overt behavior in the school setting and less online bullying, which is interesting because it's not just us, it's also across the league, that particular flip. But one of the areas that we're looking at as a league is that idea of their setting was different, they weren't together as much, and they weren't on school property as much. But one of the things that we are looking at, if we go back to 2019 or 2017 or 2015, is that our rates of school bullying on school property were still a little bit lower than they are in 2023. So that's why we want to make sure that we're being transparent and sharing this to make sure that adults understand that there has been an uptick, and we want to address that.
Okay, so you're anticipating, I was going to say, and how did this compare with 2019, another remote year? Another question, and maybe this is, I think you alluded to additional reports. In the past, we've seen data, which I think a lot of parents care about, like on vaping, tobacco use, substance, and there's none of that here. Was that because it was not something you felt need to highlight because it was just typical and not getting worse, or just no room?
I only had 20 minutes, so I just had a shorter amount of time. We do have a really nice detailed report on our substance use data, and as a coalition that focuses on substance misuse prevention, I want to make sure that we're sharing that data publicly. This is just a starting point by sharing the highlights, but I will be sharing the substance use data with the community at a community presentation. And then in addition to the substance use data, we also did a crosstab analysis to look at if a young person reported using substances, were there other risk or protective factors happening, so we can address some of those other areas. So the Mystic Valley Public Health Coalition paid for that additional data analysis, so we're working on that across 7 communities. And we also have a group of young people that are working on the data specifically that are youth leaders. So there's a big project happening related to that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess another area from 2021, and also maybe I've seen it in 2019, was stress. Because I remember you had a big chart in 2021 with like all these kids have homework stress, and I would think being back in person there might be more of that now, so I didn't see anything this year.
We had to adjust our survey because there were additional questions added at the regional level, so we weren't able to ask all of the stress questions that we've asked in the previous years.
Okay.
The stress questions were local to Reading. They were actually introduced by a middle school principal a few years ago, and being part of the Middlesex League survey, we have to use questions that have been tested in broader populations, so we weren't able to use those questions. But we do have historical data on that, and one of the things we chose when we looked at the data for this year and the questions we asked is asking specific behaviors that relate to stress or the risk behavior that comes out of not addressing stress. So we do have data related to it, but we didn't ask the questions in the same exact way.
All right, and the last question is actually like on data you presented where I think it was the mental health. I don't know whether to me it might be helpful to see more granularity. You had this category of, did a student feel poor mental health sometimes, most of the time, all of the time, and it was all that lumped together to be 50%? Because you think about adolescents, they're moody, so some of the time every adolescent is not going to have good mental health. So I think it would be helpful to see, okay, who's feeling that way, most of the time versus sometimes, because probably almost everyone would answer sometimes. So I don't know, looking at that data, I guess it didn't shock me as much to say, 60% of girls feel, I'm like, well, of course,
Yes, absolutely. I just think it's important to acknowledge that their mental health fluctuates, right? And that was the reason for that question. But in addition to that question, we asked a series of questions around depression symptoms, anxiety symptoms, self-harm, suicidal ideation. And that's where we get at, does their perception of mental health not being good some of the time, most of the time, or always translate into symptoms that are related to a mental health challenge. So when we break that 51% down, about 25% struggle with anxiety, depression, or some other form of a mental health challenge. So you're absolutely right in that it's a larger proportion that may perceive it to be, fluctuating, but of that 50%, about 25% are really challenged by some of those symptoms.
Okay, that's helpful. And I guess it sounds like I got to look at the larger report. Thank you.
It's a lot of material, so thank you for bringing out those points.
Okay. No, thank you.
thank you.
Erica. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will now be moving on to executive session. So I move that we, and we will not be returning. So I move that we adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, as an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school committee. We'll be discussing the Reading Teachers Association, the Reading Administrative Secretaries Association. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Chuck. And this will be a roll call. So Chuck,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and Tom, yes, and we are adjourned to executive session.